The alarm screamed through the small human outpost on 7. Red lights flashed on every wall. Sergeant Daniel Crane jumped up from his chair and ran to the main console. His coffee cup fell to the floor and broke into pieces, but he did not care. The screen showed a distress signal. A royal shuttle had crashed in the volcanic wastelands just 3 miles from the outpost. The words on the screen made his heart stop. Royal passenger on board, Princess. Daniel knew everyone in the galaxy knew them. They were tall beings with silver skin and black eyes. They ruled over 40 star systems. They were proud and ancient, and they looked down on humans like they were insects. But none of that mattered right now. Someone was dying out there. He pressed the communication button and tried to reach the Royal Guard. A cold voice answered him. "Human, this matter does not concern you. The Royal Guard will handle the rescue. Do not interfere." "How long until you get there?" Daniel asked. 40 minutes. Daniel looked at the data on his screen. The shuttle's hull was breaking apart. The heat from the volcanic ground was melting the metal. The fuel cells would explode in 12 minutes, maybe less. "She will be dead in 12 minutes, Daniel said. "You need to let me help." "Negative. No outsider may touch a member of the royal bloodline. This is sacred law. Stand down, human." The communication ended. Daniel stared at the silent console. He thought about the law. He thought about what would happen to him if he broke it. They did not forgive. They did not forget. If he touched their princess, they would punish him. Maybe they would kill him. Then he thought about the princess, trapped in burning metal, waiting for help that would come too late. Daniel grabbed his thermal suit from the wall. He put it on as fast as he could. He took a medical kit and oxygen mask. He ran to the transport bay and jumped into a small skiff. The vehicle was old and slow, but it could fly through the ash storms. He launched into the dark sky. The volcanic wasteland stretched out below him, red and orange with rivers of fire. Black smoke rose from cracks in the ground. The air was poison. Nothing could live out there for long. Daniel pushed the skiff to its maximum speed. The engine screamed in protest. He did not care. Every second mattered. He found the crash site after 4 minutes of flying. The royal shuttle lay broken on a field of black rock. Half of it was already on fire. The other half was sinking into a pool of liquid rock. He could see the flames reaching higher and higher. Daniel landed the skiff 50 meters away. The heat hit him like a wall when he opened the door. Even with his thermal suit, he could feel his skin starting to burn. He ran toward the wreckage. The main door of the shuttle was blocked by twisted metal. Daniel found a crack in the hull and squeezed through. Inside, the smoke was so thick he could barely see. He put on his oxygen mask and moved forward. He found her in the main cabin. Princess was young, even by standards. Her silver skin was covered in ash and blood. A heavy support beam had fallen across her body, pinning her to the floor. She was still breathing, but her eyes were closed. She did not know he was there. Daniel tried to lift the beam. It was too heavy. He looked around and found a metal rod. He used it as a lever and pushed with all his strength. The beam moved a little. He pushed harder. His muscles screamed in pain. The beam moved more. Finally, he pushed it far enough. He grabbed the princess and pulled her free. That was when his gloves caught fire. The metal rod had become red hot. The heat had burned through his gloves and reached his hands. Daniel screamed but did not let go of the princess. He lifted her over his shoulder and started moving toward the exit. The fire was everywhere now. The walls were melting. The ceiling was falling in pieces. Daniel ran through the flames, holding the princess tight. He could smell his own flesh burning. The pain was beyond anything he had ever felt. He made it through the crack in the hull. He kept running. The black rock cut through his boots. The hot air filled his lungs, but he did not stop. He could not stop. He was 200 meters from the shuttle when it exploded. The blast threw him forward. He twisted his body in the air, making sure to land on his back so the princess would not be hurt. He hit the ground hard and felt something crack in his chest, probably a rib, maybe two. He lay there for a moment looking up at the red sky. Fire and smoke danced above him. The princess was still breathing on his chest. She was alive. He had done it. His hands hurt so much he wanted to scream. He looked at them and saw that the skin was gone. The flesh was black and red and terrible. He would probably never use them properly again. But she was alive. Daniel laughed. It was a crazy laugh, the laugh of a man who had just done something impossible. He did not know why he was laughing. Maybe because he was still alive. Maybe because he had won against the fire and the time and the distance. He heard engines in the sky. He looked up and saw ships landing around him. The Royal Guard had finally arrived. They were too late to help, but they were right on time to see what he had done. Soldiers in golden armor surrounded him. They looked at the princess, then at Daniel, then at his burned hands. Their faces showed no emotion, but their eyes were cold. "Human," one of them said, "you have touched a member of the royal bloodline." Daniel tried to sit up. The pain in his chest made him gasp. "I saved her life. Your shuttle was going to explode. She would have died." "That is not relevant. You have broken the sacred law." They pulled the princess from his arms. A medic began treating her wounds. No one offered to help Daniel. No one looked at his hands. "You will come with us," the soldier said. "You will face judgment for your crime." Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to tell them they were crazy. He had just walked through fire to save their princess. He had burned his hands to the bone for her, and they were calling him a criminal. But he was too tired to fight, too hurt, too broken. They put chains on his wrists. The metal touched his burned flesh and he screamed. The soldiers did not care. They dragged him to their ship and threw him inside. As the ship rose into the sky, Daniel looked out the window at the burning wastelands below. Somewhere down there, his skiff was still sitting on the black rock. His coffee cup was still broken on the floor of the outpost. His life was still waiting for him to come back. But he knew he would never see any of it again. They had their princess, and now they had their criminal. Daniel closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if he would live or die. But he knew one thing for certain. He would do it all again, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Because some things were more important than laws. Some things were more important than punishment. Some things were more important than fear. A life was a life, and he had saved one today. That was enough. The prison cell was cold and dark. Daniel sat on the hard metal floor with his back against the wall. His hands were wrapped in dirty bandages that had not been changed in 2 days. The pain was constant, like fire that never stopped burning. No one had come to help him. No doctor, no medic, no one. He did not know how long he had been in this cell. There were no windows, no clock, only the cold and the dark and the pain. Sometimes he slept. Sometimes he stared at the walls. Sometimes he screamed. On the 3rd day, the door opened. 2 guards entered the cell. They grabbed Daniel by his arms and pulled him to his feet. He was too weak to resist. They dragged him through long hallways made of white crystal. The light hurt his eyes after so long in the dark. They brought him to a great chamber. It was the biggest room Daniel had ever seen. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. The walls were covered in symbols and writing he did not understand. Thousands sat in rows, watching him like he was an animal in a cage. At the front of the chamber, 7 judges sat on tall chairs made of black stone. They wore robes of silver and gold. Their faces were old and hard and showed no mercy. Daniel was forced to stand in the center of the room. His chains were attached to a metal ring in the floor. He could not move. He could barely stand. A voice echoed through the chamber. "The High Council of is now in session. The accused is the human known as Daniel Crane. He faces 3 charges." The crowd fell silent. Daniel looked around and saw only hostile faces. He was alone here, completely alone. First charge, the voice continued. Unlawful contact with royal blood. The accused did touch and carry princess without permission or authority. Second charge, trespass upon sovereign rescue authority. The accused did perform a rescue operation that was the exclusive right of the royal guard. Third charge, violation of the sacred untouchability doctrine. The accused did break the most holy law of our empire by laying hands upon a member of the royal family. Daniel wanted to speak. He wanted to tell them that he had saved her life, that she would have died without him, that their royal guard had been 40 minutes away while she had only 12 minutes to live. But no one asked for his words. No one cared what he had to say. The main door of the chamber opened again. A human woman walked in, wearing the formal clothes of a diplomat. Daniel recognized her. The human ambassador, too. She looked tired and worried, but she walked with her head held high. "I request permission to speak on behalf of the accused," she said. The judges looked at each other. The oldest one, with deep lines on his silver face, nodded slowly. "You may speak, ambassador, but choose your words carefully." Walked to the center of the room and stood next to Daniel. She put her hand on his shoulder for just a moment. That small touch gave him more comfort than he could say. "Honored judges," she began, "I do not deny that Sergeant Crane touched Princess. I do not deny that he carried her from the burning shuttle. These facts are true." The crowd murmured. They had expected her to argue against the evidence. "But I ask this council to consider the circumstances. The princess was trapped in a shuttle that was about to explode. The royal guard was 40 minutes away. She had 12 minutes to live, maybe less." Paused and looked at each judge in turn. Sergeant Crane made a choice. He chose to save a life. He knew your laws, he knew the punishment, but he went anyway. He walked through fire. He burned his hands to the bone. He risked everything to save someone he had never met. She pointed at Daniel's wrapped hands. "Look at him. Look at what he sacrificed. Is this the action of a criminal, or is this the action of a hero?" The oldest judge leaned forward. "Ambassador, your words are moving, but they do not change the law. The sacred untouchability doctrine is clear. No outsider may touch royal blood. There are no exceptions." "Then make an exception," said. "Change the law. Show the galaxy that values life above tradition." "We will not change our laws for a human." The words hit like a slap. She took a step back. Daniel could see the anger in her eyes, but she controlled it. She was a diplomat. She knew how to hide her feelings. "Then I invoke diplomatic immunity," she said. "Sergeant Crane is a member of the human military, stationed at our embassy outpost. He is protected by the treaty between our peoples." A new voice spoke from the crowd. "Diplomatic immunity does not apply in cases of sacred law." Daniel looked and saw in the golden armor of the royal guard. He was tall, even for his species, and his eyes burned with hatred. Daniel recognized him. Commander, the leader of the royal guard who had arrived too late to save the princess. Walked forward until he stood before the judges. This human humiliated the royal guard. He did what we could not do. He saved the princess while we flew through the sky, useless and slow. The commander's voice grew louder. He must be punished, not just for breaking the law, but for showing the empire that a single human could do what the entire royal guard could not. Daniel finally found his voice. "I did not do it to humiliate anyone. I did it because she was going to die." Turned to look at him. The hatred in his eyes was terrible to see. "You should have let her die. It would have been better than this shame." The chamber erupted in noise. Some shouted in agreement. Others shouted in protest. The judges called for order, but no one listened. Stepped between Daniel and, "How dare you? You would rather have your princess dead than saved by a human. What kind of protector are you?" Raised his hand as if to strike her. The guards moved forward. The crowd screamed. Enough! The oldest judge had risen from his seat. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Everyone fell silent. This council will now deliver its verdict. Daniel felt his heart stop. This was it. This was the moment that would decide his fate. The judge looked down at him with cold eyes. Daniel Crane of Earth, this council finds you guilty on all 3 charges. The evidence is clear. The law is clear. Your intentions do not matter. Your sacrifice does not matter. Only the law matters. Closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. Your sentence is as follows. You will receive 50 lashes with the neural whip. This punishment will be carried out in public in the main square of the capital city. After the punishment is complete, you will be expelled from space forever. Your name will be marked in our records as a criminal. You will never be allowed to return. The crowd cheered, smiled. Daniel said nothing. He looked at the floor and thought about the princess. He thought about her face covered in ash and blood. He thought about the weight of her body on his shoulder as he ran through the fire. He would do it again. He knew that now. Even knowing everything that would happen, he would do it all again. Some things were worth any price. The guards grabbed his arms and began to drag him away. Called out to him, but he could not hear her words over the noise of the crowd. As they pulled him through the door, Daniel looked back one last time. He saw the 7 judges sitting on their thrones of black stone. He saw Commander standing proud and tall. He saw standing alone in the center of the chamber, small and helpless. And he saw something else. High above, in a balcony hidden in shadow, he saw a figure watching him, a young woman with silver skin and bandages on her arms. Princess. Their eyes met for just a moment. Daniel saw something in her face. Shame, guilt, gratitude, he could not be sure. Then the door closed and she was gone. Tomorrow he would feel the whip. Tomorrow he would pay the price for his kindness. But tonight he would sleep knowing that he had done the right thing. That was all that mattered. The sun rose red over the capital city of. Daniel watched it through the small window of his cell. It was beautiful in a cold and alien way. He wondered if it would be the last sunrise he would ever see. The guards came for him at dawn. They stripped off his shirt and wrapped his burned hands in fresh bandages. For a moment, Daniel thought they were showing kindness. Then he realized the truth. They wanted him to look presentable for the crowd. They wanted the galaxy to see a clean punishment, not a broken man. They marched him through the streets of the capital. Buildings of white crystal rose on every side, shining in the morning light. The streets were paved with smooth stone. Everything was perfect and beautiful and cold. Thousands lined the streets to watch him pass. Some threw things at him. Others shouted insults he did not understand. Most just stared with their hollow black eyes, curious to see the human who had dared to touch their princess. Daniel walked with his head up. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him afraid. The main square was enormous. It could hold 100,000 people, and today it was full, had come from across the planet to witness the punishment. Cameras floated in the air, broadcasting the event to every corner of the empire. The whole galaxy was watching. In the center of the square stood a tall pillar made of black stone. Metal rings were attached to its surface at different heights. This was the punishment pillar. Daniel had heard stories about it. Criminals had been tied to this pillar for thousands of years. Many of them had died here. Commander stood beside the pillar, holding a weapon that looked like a whip made of blue light. The neural whip. Daniel had heard stories about this too. It was designed to cause maximum pain without killing the victim. Every nerve in the body would feel like it was on fire. Some people went mad from the pain. Others begged for death. Daniel was led to the pillar. His chains were removed and his wrists were tied to the metal rings. His back was exposed to the crowd. He could feel their eyes on his skin. Walked in front of him. The commander's face was full of cruel joy. Any last words, human? Daniel looked at him. He thought about all the things he could say. He could beg for mercy. He could curse them all. He could tell them they were wrong. Instead, he said nothing. He just looked at with calm eyes. The commander's smile faded a little. He had expected fear. He had expected tears. This calm silence was not what he wanted. "Very well," said. "Let the punishment begin." He walked behind Daniel. The crowd fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the neural whip as it came to life. The first strike hit Daniel across the shoulders. The pain was beyond anything he had ever imagined. It was like every cell in his body was exploding at once. His vision went white. His legs gave out, and he fell to his knees, held up only by the chains on his wrists. But he did not scream. The second strike hit him across the middle of his back. The pain was even worse. Daniel bit down on his tongue so hard that blood filled his mouth. His whole body shook. But he did not scream. The third strike, the fourth, the fifth. Each one was worse than the last. Daniel could feel his skin tearing. He could feel blood running down his back. The world became nothing but pain and fire and red darkness. But he did not scream. The crowd began to murmur. They had seen many punishments in this square. They had seen warriors and criminals and traitors tied to this pillar. All of them had screamed. All of them had begged for mercy by the 10th lash. This human was different. Struck harder, the 10th lash, the 15th, the 20th. Daniel's back was a ruin of torn flesh. His blood dripped onto the white stones and stained them red. But he did not scream. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Some looked away. Others leaned forward, unable to believe what they were seeing. A human, the weakest species in the galaxy, was enduring the neural whip in silence. Was sweating now. His arm was getting tired. He had never had to work this hard before. Usually by now, the victim was unconscious or begging for death. The 30th lash. Daniel's vision was fading. He could barely feel his legs anymore. The pain had become everything. There was no world outside of it, no past, no future. Only the endless fire burning through his body. But still, he did not scream. He thought about his mother back on Earth. She had raised him alone after his father died. She had taught him to be strong. She had taught him that pain was just a message from the body, and messages could be ignored. He thought about his little sister who had always looked up to him. She wanted to be a soldier like him one day. What would she think if she saw him screaming and begging? What would she learn from that? He thought about the princess. She was alive because of him. She would grow up and maybe do great things. Maybe she would remember the human who saved her. Maybe she would be different from the others. That thought gave him strength. The 40th lash. His arm was trembling. The commander's face was red with effort and anger. This was not how it was supposed to go. The human should be broken by now. He should be nothing but a screaming pile of flesh. But Daniel hung from his chains with his eyes open, staring at the stone pillar in front of him. His lips were pressed together. His jaw was tight. Blood ran from his back and his mouth, but not a single sound came from his throat. The crowd had stopped murmuring. A strange silence had fallen over the square. Even the cameras seemed to hover closer, as if the machines themselves were curious about this impossible human. The 45th lash stumbled. He had to take a moment to catch his breath. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold the whip. "Why will you not scream?" he shouted. "Scream, beg, show them what you really are." Daniel turned his head just enough to look at the commander. His eyes were bloodshot and full of pain, but there was something else in them. Something that made take a step back. Defiance. The human was not just enduring the punishment. He was winning. Every silent moment was a victory. Every breath without a scream was a defeat for and his empire. The 50th lash fell, put all his remaining strength into it. The whip cracked across Daniel's back with a sound like thunder. Daniel's body jerked. His hands clenched into fists. Blood sprayed across the white stones. But he did not scream. And then it was over. Dropped the whip. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He looked at Daniel with something close to fear. This was not possible. No one could endure 50 lashes in silence, not even the strongest warrior. But this human had done it. The guards cut Daniel's chains. He fell to the ground, unable to hold himself up anymore. He lay on the blood-stained stones, his back a destroyed mess of torn flesh and burned nerves. But his eyes were still open, and they still burned with defiance. The crowd did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They stood in silence, looking at the broken human on the ground, and they did not know what to think. They had come to see a punishment. They had come to see a weak creature suffer and scream and beg for mercy. Instead, they had seen something else, something they did not have a word for. They had seen courage. Daniel lay on the cold stones and looked up at the red sky. The pain was starting to fade now, replaced by a strange numbness. He knew he was dying. No one could lose this much blood and survive. But it did not matter. He had done what he set out to do. He had shown them that humans were not weak. He had shown them that pain could be endured. He had shown them that some things were stronger than fear. His eyes began to close. The red sky faded to black. And somewhere in the crowd, hidden among the thousands of silver faces, Princess watched with tears running down her cheeks. She had seen everything, and she would never forget. The silence in the square was complete. Not a single voice spoke. Not a single foot moved. 100,000 stood like statues, staring at the broken human on the blood-stained stones. Commander looked at the crowd with confusion. This was supposed to be a moment of triumph. The human had been punished. The law had been upheld. Why was no one celebrating? He opened his mouth to speak, to remind them of the victory they had achieved. But before he could say a word, a sound reached his ears. A sound that made his blood turn cold. Horns, royal horns. The horns that announced the arrival of the queen. His face went white. This was impossible. Queen Seraphine had not left the inner palace in over 10 years. She ruled through her council, through her commanders, through layers of tradition and protocol. The common people had nearly forgotten what she looked like. But the horns did not lie. The crowd parted like water before a blade. A procession entered the square from the eastern gate. Royal guards in white armor walked in perfect formation. Behind them came servants carrying banners of silver and gold. And behind them, walking slowly but with terrible purpose, came the queen herself. Queen Seraphine was old, ancient even by standards. Her silver skin was lined with the marks of centuries. Her hair, once black as space, was now white as starlight. But her eyes burned with a cold fire that made even the bravest warriors look away. Beside her walked Princess. The young woman's face was pale with emotion. Her hands were clenched at her sides. She had begged her grandmother to come. She had told her everything that happened. And finally, the queen had listened. The procession stopped at the edge of the punishment area. The queen looked at Daniel's broken body on the ground. She looked at the blood on the white stones. She looked at the neural whip lying where had dropped it. Then she looked at himself. The commander fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, I did not expect. You honor us with your presence." The queen did not respond to him. Instead, she walked forward until she stood over Daniel. The human's eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow. He was barely alive. "Is there a medic here?" the queen asked. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the square. Stumbled over his words. "Your Majesty, the human is a criminal. He has no right to medical treatment until he is expelled from our space." The queen turned her head slowly to look at him. "I did not ask for your opinion, Commander. I asked if there was a medic here." A in white robe stepped forward. "I am a medic, Your Majesty." "Then help him now." The medic looked at, uncertain. The commander's face was twisted with anger, but he did not dare to contradict the queen. He gave a small nod. The medic rushed to Daniel's side and began treating his wounds. The human did not move. He did not seem to know that anything was happening. The queen watched for a moment. Then she turned to face the crowd. Her eyes moved slowly across the sea of silver faces, and wherever they touched, people looked down in shame. "I have watched the broadcast of this punishment," she said. Her voice was still soft, but somehow it filled the entire square. "I have seen what was done here today." Stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the human broke our most sacred law. He touched Princess without permission. The High Council found him guilty on all charges. The punishment was just and proper." The queen raised one hand, fell silent immediately. "The punishment was just and proper," the queen repeated. "Those are interesting words, Commander." She began to walk slowly around the square, and the crowd moved back to give her space. The floating cameras followed her every step. "Tell me, Commander, what would have happened if this human had not gone to that shuttle?" His face tightened. "The royal guard was on its way. We would have saved the princess." "In 40 minutes. "Yes, Your Majesty." "And how long did the princess have before the shuttle exploded?" Was silent. "I will tell you," the queen said. 12 minutes, perhaps less. The human's own records show this clearly. The shuttle exploded exactly 12 minutes and 33 seconds after he received the distress signal. She stopped walking and turned to face directly. "So I ask you again, Commander, what would have happened if this human had not gone to that shuttle?" The answer hung in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone. "Princess would have died." The queen nodded as if it answered. "My granddaughter would be dead. My bloodline would have ended in fire and ash, because your guards were too slow, because your protocols were more important than her survival." "Your Majesty," said, his voice desperate now, "the sacred law exists to protect the royal family, to maintain the proper order. If we allow outsiders to touch royal blood, even with good intentions, we open the door to those with bad intentions." "I understand the purpose of the law, Commander. I helped write it 300 years ago." The crowd gasped. They had not known that. The queen continued. "The law was written to protect royalty from harm, to prevent assassination and manipulation and abuse. It was never meant to be used like this." She gestured at Daniel's broken body. "This human used his own body as a shield. He burned his hands saving my granddaughter. He asked for nothing in return, and you called him a criminal." Fell to his knees again. "Your Majesty, I only followed the law. The High Council made the judgment. I merely carried out the sentence." "Yes, you carried it out with great enthusiasm, I saw." The queen's eyes were like ice. 50 lashes with the neural whip. You volunteered to deliver them yourself. You smiled while you did it. The commander's face went pale. And still he did not scream. The queen turned to look at the crowd. "Did you see that? Did you all see that? A human, the species you call weak and soft and primitive, endured 50 lashes without a single cry. Can any of you say you would do the same?" No one answered. No one could meet her eyes. The queen walked back to where Daniel lay. The medic had stopped the bleeding and was wrapping bandages around the worst of the wounds. The human's color was a little better, but he was still unconscious. "I have ruled this empire for 400 years, the queen said. "I have seen wars and plagues and disasters. I have seen heroes and cowards and everything in between, but I have never seen anything like what this human did today." She knelt down beside Daniel. The crowd gasped again. A queen did not kneel, not for anyone. "He did not save my granddaughter for reward or recognition. He did not save her to embarrass you, Commander. He saved her because it was the right thing to do, because he could not stand by and watch someone die when he had the power to help." The queen reached out and gently touched Daniel's face. "This is not weakness. This is strength of a kind we have forgotten. This is what it means to be truly brave." She stood up and faced the crowd one final time. Her voice rose until it echoed off the crystal buildings. "You have punished this man for saving a life. You have called him criminal for showing mercy. You have tried to break him for being better than you." She pointed at Daniel. "But look at him. He is not broken. He is bloody and wounded and barely alive, but he is not broken, and he never will be." The Queen's eyes burned with cold fire. Because that is what humanity is. That is what they are made of. And today, we have shown the galaxy that we are afraid of that strength. She turned to the 7 judges of the High Council who had followed her procession into the square. They stood in a row, their faces pale with fear. "The judgment you passed was wrong. The punishment you ordered was wrong. And tomorrow we will begin to make it right." The Queen looked up at the cameras that hovered in the air. "Let the galaxy hear this. The Empire of owes a debt to Daniel Crane of Earth, and the Empire of pays its debts." She turned and began to walk back toward her procession. The crowd parted before her in stunned silence. Princess lingered for a moment, looking at the human who had saved her life. Her eyes were full of tears. "Thank you," she whispered, "thank you." Then she followed her grandmother, and the royal procession left the square. Behind them, the crowd slowly began to move again, but they did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They looked at each other with confused and troubled eyes, and they wondered if everything they believed might be wrong. And on the blood-stained stones, Daniel Crane finally opened his eyes. He did not know what had happened. He did not know that a queen had knelt beside him. He did not know that the galaxy had watched him refuse to break. He only knew that he was still alive. And somehow that was enough. 3 days passed. Daniel woke in a soft bed in a room of white crystal. Sunlight poured through tall windows, warming his face. For a moment, he did not know where he was. He thought he might be dead. Then the pain reminded him that he was very much alive. His back burned with a constant fire. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent waves of agony through his body. But he could breathe. He could move. He was alive. A human medic sat beside his bed. Daniel recognized her from the embassy. Her name was Lucy Vance, and she was the best doctor on 7. "Welcome back," she said with a tired smile. "You had us worried for a while." "Where am I?" Daniel's voice was rough and weak. "The royal palace. The queen herself ordered that you be brought here and treated by human doctors." Lucy shook her head in disbelief. "I never thought I would set foot in this place." Apparently, she did not trust medics to take proper care of you. Daniel tried to sit up. The pain made him gasp, and Lucy gently pushed him back down. "Easy, you lost a lot of blood. Your back is going to need months to heal properly. You are lucky to be alive." "The princess," Daniel said, "is she okay?" Lucy laughed softly. "You almost died, and the first thing you ask about is the person you saved." "Yes, Daniel, she is fine, better than fine. She has been asking to see you every day." Daniel closed his eyes. The relief was overwhelming. He had done the right thing. He had made the right choice. "What happened?" he asked. "After the punishment, I remember falling, then nothing." Lucy's face grew serious. "A lot happened. The queen came to the square. She stopped the punishment and ordered you to be treated. Then she gave a speech that is being broadcast across the entire galaxy." "A speech?" "She told everyone that owes you a debt, that you showed courage they had forgotten, that the judgment against you was wrong." Lucy paused. "She called you a hero, Daniel, in front of the whole empire." Daniel did not know what to say. He had expected to die in that square. He had expected his body to be thrown into space, forgotten and unmourned. This was something he could not have imagined. "There is going to be another ceremony today," Lucy said. "The queen wants you there. Can you stand?" "I do not know." "Well, we have a few hours to find out. Rest now. I will wake you when it is time." Daniel closed his eyes and let sleep take him. When he woke again, the sun had moved across the sky. Lucy helped him out of bed and into a simple white shirt and pants. Every movement was painful, but Daniel pushed through it. He had endured worse. Guards in white armor came to escort him through the palace. The halls were lined with crystal and gold, more beautiful than anything Daniel had ever seen. Stopped and stared as he passed. Some bowed their heads, others looked away in shame. They brought him to the same square where he had been punished 3 days ago, but everything was different now. The blood had been cleaned from the stones. The punishment pillar had been covered with white cloth, and instead of 100,000 hostile faces, Daniel saw a crowd of who looked at him with something close to respect. A platform had been built in the center of the square. The queen stood upon it, dressed in robes of silver and white. Beside her stood Princess, and beside the princess stood the 7 judges of the High Council. Commander was there too, but he did not stand with the others. He knelt at the edge of the platform, his hands bound in chains. Daniel was led up the steps to the platform. Every step sent fire through his back, but he kept his face calm. He would not show weakness, not here, not now. The queen watched him approach. Her ancient eyes held a warmth that had not been there before. "Daniel Crane of Earth," she said. "3 days ago you stood in this square as a criminal. You were punished for the crime of saving a life. Today you stand here as a guest of honor." The crowd was silent, listening to every word. "The judgment against you was wrong. The law was misused. Justice was perverted into cruelty." The queen looked at the 7 judges. "This council failed you. This empire failed you, and I failed you by not acting sooner." Daniel wanted to speak, but the queen raised her hand. "Let me finish. There is much to say, and the galaxy is watching." She turned to address the crowd and the floating cameras. "For 300 years, the law of untouchability has protected the royal family. But a law that punishes heroes and rewards cowards is not a law worth keeping. From this day forward, the doctrine is changed. Emergency rescue shall be permitted by any being of any species, without penalty. Life must always come before tradition." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was a fundamental change to law, nothing like it had happened in centuries. "Furthermore," the queen continued, "Daniel Crane is hereby declared innocent of all charges. His record is cleared. His name is restored." She stepped forward and took something from a servant who stood nearby. It was a medallion on a silver chain. The symbol of the royal house was engraved on its surface. "Daniel Crane, I name you Royal Protector. This title has not been given to anyone outside the species in all of our history. It means that you are bound to the throne by blood debt. You are under our protection. Any who harm you harm the crown itself." She placed the medallion around Daniel's neck. The metal was cool against his skin. "You will always have a place among us," the queen said, "not as a servant or a soldier, as family." Daniel finally found his voice. "Your Majesty, I did not save the princess for rewards. I saved her because it was the right thing to do. I do not need titles or medals." The queen smiled. It transformed her ancient face, making her look almost young. "I know, that is why you deserve them." She turned to face Commander, who still knelt in chains at the edge of the platform. "Now we come to the matter of justice." His face was pale with fear. He had been stripped of his armor and his rank. He wore simple clothes like a common prisoner. "Commander, you volunteered to punish an innocent man. You took joy in his suffering. You tried to break him when he had done nothing wrong." The queen's voice grew cold. "The sentence you delivered was 50 lashes. It seems only fair that you receive the same." She looked at Daniel. "The law says that the victim may deliver the punishment if he chooses. The whip is there, waiting. What do you say, Royal Protector? Do you want your revenge?" Everyone turned to look at Daniel. The neural whip lay on a table nearby, its blue light humming softly. All he had to do was pick it up. All he had to do was make feel the same pain that still burned in his back. Daniel looked at the whip. He looked at who was trembling with fear. He thought about the pain he had endured. He thought about the hatred in his eyes as he delivered each lash. Then he shook his head. No. The Queen raised an eyebrow. No. I did not save your granddaughter for revenge. I saved her because it was the right thing to do. Daniel looked at. Hurting you will not heal my wounds. It will not change what happened. It will only make me the same kind of person you are. He turned to the Queen. I do not want to hurt anyone. I just want to go home. The square was silent. Everyone stared at the human who had just refused revenge. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she inclined her head in respect. And that, she said quietly, is why humanity will always be more than we understood. She turned to address the crowd one final time. Let the galaxy take note. When our own laws failed us, when our own protectors proved inadequate, it was a human who walked through fire. It was a human who endured our punishment without breaking, and it was a human who chose mercy over revenge. Her voice rose until it echoed off the crystal buildings. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered what we think we know about Earth and its people. They are not weak. They are not primitive. They are strong in ways we have forgotten. And today, they have taught us something we should never have needed to learn. Princess stepped forward. She knelt before Daniel and pressed her hand to her heart, the highest gesture of gratitude. You saved my life, she said. I can never repay that debt, but I can promise you this. As long as I live, humanity will have a friend in the Empire. And when I become queen one day, I will make sure the galaxy remembers what you did here. Daniel looked at the princess, at the queen, at the vast alien crowd that had come to watch him suffer and now stood in stunned silence. He managed a tired smile. I could really use a vacation first, if that is all right. For the first time in living memory, the queen laughed. The sound was bright and warm, and it spread through the crowd like ripples in water. Others began to laugh too, the tension breaking at last. I think that can be arranged, the Queen said. Where would you like to go? Daniel thought about it for a moment. Home. I want to see my mother. I want to tell her what happened. The Queen nodded. Then you shall have the finest ship in our fleet to take you there. And when you are ready to return, if you ever wish to return, there will always be a place for you here. Daniel bowed his head in gratitude. He did not have the words to express what he felt, so he simply said, "Thank you." The ceremony ended. The crowd began to scatter, but the story did not end there. Over the following weeks and months, the story of Daniel Crane spread across the galaxy. Every species heard about the human who had saved an alien princess, endured torture without breaking, and refused revenge when it was offered to him. Earth's reputation changed forever. Humanity was no longer seen as a young and primitive species. They were seen as something different, something special, a people who would walk through fire for strangers and forgive those who wronged them. Other empires began to seek alliances with Earth. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Humans were welcomed in places they had never been allowed before. And it all started with one man who saw someone dying and refused to look away. Daniel Crane went home. He hugged his mother. He played catch with his sister. He sat on the porch of his childhood home and watched the sunset over the mountains of Colorado. He still carried the scars on his back. They would never fully heal, but he carried something else too, a medallion on a silver chain, a title that no human had ever held before, and the knowledge that he had made a difference. Sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the stars and think about the princess he had saved. He wondered what she was doing. He wondered if she was happy. And somewhere across the galaxy, Princess would look up at those same stars and think about the human who had changed everything. They had tried to make him an example of human weakness. Instead, he had shown them human strength. and the galaxy would never forget.